So I've been broke for the majority of my life. Currently, I am not broke, and it's not because I just made more money. And that's one of the biggest misconceptions, is that when you're broke, if I just made more money, then everything would be good. The problem is that when you make more money, you still spend more than you should. And so today, what I want to actually do is go over what I did that basically allowed me to go from broke to not broke. Context is key when it comes to mindset and money. Because when you grow up poor or when you're around people that are also broke, it basically never teaches you about money or allows you to think more creatively or more opportunistically. And this was one of my problems. The problem growing up when you're poor is that you're not surrounded by financial role models or mentors. Everybody that I knew, every family that I knew was blue collar. All right, we had less than other people. This was something that I was aware of, and we always struggled. We still had our basic needs met, but there was never any extra. And so when I was growing up, I learned that this was normal. This was something that was just kind of like okay, even though it sucked, even though it was embarrassing because I didn't want my mom to drop me off at school because our car sucked so bad. It was embarrassing. It was embarrassing to say, hey, I'm sorry, I can't go out with my friends because I don't have the money. Or when I went to my mom, I've told this story 1,000 times, but I'm still going to tell it one more time. I went to her when I was like 12 or 13 years old. I said, hey, I want $1.25 for pizza. She looked at me, she goes, we don't have an extra $1.25. And that landed. For some reason, there was something about that pizza that I wanted so bad that it stuck. And it made me realize this is no way to live. But it was at that moment that I realized something's got to change. The problem is that I didn't know how to change it. I assumed, like many of you, that once I was an adult and I would just basically start a business, I thought that I would own a fitness center or a chain of fitness centers because that was my only dream from the age of 12, that my financial future would be amazing, right? As long as I made more money, everything would be good. Well, that is not the case. Because with most people, as you start to make more money, you start to spend more. All right? Now, when you first start making a little bit of extra money, things are great. I have often said when I made $100,000 for the first time, that's when, in my opinion, I felt like I was killing it the most. Because up until this point, I was literally living on about $20,000 to $24,000 a year. When I owned my fitness center, that's how much I made. Fast forward, I basically decided to try to open up a chain of fitness centers. My partner and I, we went and got a bank loan, and we also secured some investment dollars from friends and family. Long story short, it was about $500,000. Essentially, it was like $500,000 at the time that we had in debt, whether or not it was equipment obligations, leases, auto payments, like whatever. We had basically like $500,000 in debt. And then we decided to shut it down, right? Because it just wasn't working. But at that time, I was also racking up credit card debt because I was taking money off of the credit card in order to pay my staff. At the time, I was working at a country club, driving a beer cart just to make enough money to give my wife, or then girlfriend, now wife, a little bit of extra money to put gas in my car. I was destitute, I was broke, and I was unhappy. There I am, a 30-year-old dude, I'm driving a beer cart, and I have to make the hard decision and hard call that I've got to file bankruptcy. We shut the businesses down, and I was on the hook for this money. And so at that point, it was one of the hardest decisions I had to make. Actually, the decision was easy. The emotional toll filing bankruptcy took was incredibly challenging and hard because I felt like a huge mooch and I felt like a loser. But it was at that point, that precise moment, that I decided I will never, ever get into financial trouble again. I will never buy anything if I can't afford it. And afford it doesn't mean a credit card. It means paying cash. The year was 2006, and I filed bankruptcy. It was one of the most shameful things I felt like I ever did because I am not the type of guy that doesn't take care of his responsibilities, but I did not have any option. I was as broke got. But it basically changed the trajectory financially of my life because of a few things that I did and didn't do. All right, number one, I didn't spend on credit cards anymore. From that point, I only bought stuff that I could afford. Now, it doesn't mean that I didn't buy things on credit and then pay it off to build my credit, which I did. When I filed bankruptcy, literally the day it was like expunged or discharged, I got like credit card offers in the mail. And I knew that if I wanted to ever have the ability to basically borrow money at a good rate, I needed to build my credit back, right? And so I got a Capital One card. The interest rate was like 21%. And so I made little purchases. I used it for gas in my car. I'd buy gas and then every month I'd pay it right off. Because I knew that if I ever started to get over my skis or I ever started to basically spend too much that I couldn't afford to pay it off, it would be a vicious cycle and I wouldn't be able to basically get out of it. And so that was a point where I stopped using credit cards as something that I would actually purchase things that I didn't need or I just wanted. Which brings me to the next thing I did. I stopped buying shit I didn't need. So we are all, to some degree, on this vicious cycle. We work, we get money, and then we gotta buy, we gotta spend. We gotta get things that are gonna make us feel good or that we want. And unfortunately, when you're in this consumer mentality, it's incredibly difficult to get off of that financial treadmill. You're always working, you're always buying, you're never truly getting ahead. It wasn't until I basically decided, all right, I've gotta push down the urge to spend and buy and live well below my means. So what did this mean? It meant that I drove an old car. It meant that I didn't live in a super nice place. It meant that I didn't buy new clothing for literally over a year. I also didn't go out to eat. It was literally like spending freeze. I needed to stop wasting money on shit I didn't need. Do not do what most people do, which is increase your living expenses to basically keep up with the amount of money that you're making that's in addition to what you were making. All right, what I mean by that is there's so many people that once they start to make more money, they're still broke. The reason is because they haven't adjusted their lifestyle or kept it the same. They've adjusted it up. So they make an extra $50,000. They're like, awesome, I'm gonna buy $50,000 more shit. And then you're in the same exact position that you were. You're broke as shit. Gentlemen, you've got to push down the urge to buy. You've got to get yourself off of the treadmill. The next thing I did was I invested in myself. I saved. The extra money that I wasn't spending buying shit, I started to save. Now, there are different mechanisms and methods to save. A lot of people say, oh, save 10% of your income, put it in a 401k, whatever. I'm not getting into that, but I started to save. I lived drastically below my means. I literally lived like I was still broke. And that was one of the things that basically helped me and got me over this whole consumerism mentality. But like I said, when I made $100,000 for the first time, I didn't move, I didn't buy a new car. I literally was killing it because I went from $20,000 or $24,000 to $100,000. I had like $80,000 more that I was like, yo, I'm killing it. I felt like I was literally killing it. But then I started to invest in myself, invest in my skill set, which is the next thing I did to get unbroke. I basically knew I've got one skill. My skill is personal training. That's it. And that skill is something that I don't want to do anymore. I hated fitness at that point. And so I started to invest. I invested my time, I invested my money, I invested my resources in learning to be an image consultant. And then instead of charging like $25, $30 for a session, I was charging $1,200, $1,500 for the day. I increased my skill set to have higher value skills. And when you do this, it doesn't matter what it is, if somebody will pay you or you're solving rich people's problems, you're gonna make more money. And you're not gonna have to break rocks to make pennies. And then one day it happened, $5,000. I had $5,000 in my bank account for the first time in my life. And that is when everything changed and the switch went off in my brain. This is amazing because for the first time in my life, I didn't worry about money. I didn't stress out. I wasn't broke. I felt like I was rich. I had $5,000, which means that I could basically not work, or if I lost my job or if I didn't make any money, I could basically survive for like 2 months because I was still living like I was earning $2,500 a month, which is something that you need to do, live below your means. So I had $5,000 and then everything changed. For the first time in my life, I didn't worry about money. For the first time in my life, I didn't fear not having money. And it was amazing what happened. For the first time, I was able to think more creatively. For the first time, I was able to basically think about things and do things that I wanted to do as opposed to what I needed to do. Because when you're looking for hustle after hustle after hustle just to basically put gas in your car or buy groceries, it is a miserable place to be and it's a miserable existence. But that $5,000 was a game changer. Not buying things that I didn't need on credit cards, also a game changer. The high interest that you are paying when you're buying things that you want as opposed to what you need and you're using a credit card, it is stifling. It is also going to keep you poor. And this is the whole game, gentlemen. The system is rigged. It's rigged against you. It's rigged against me. People at the top, they're the ones that are making the money. They're making it off of you and me because we're stupid and we can't control that impulse. The next thing I did after I upgraded my skill set was I started trying a bunch of shit. I was like, all right, the fitness center didn't work. I'm going to try some other businesses. And so I wrote an ebook. And then I did the style system. I went on Shark Tank for that. That was a big fail. And then I started accessories. And then I tried clothing. And then I did basically grooming products, which was another critical thing that I did. I kept testing a bunch of shit and I found something that worked. Right here, right? Year number 1, 2013, I made $30,000 off of my side hustle, Pete and Pedro. 2014, 65,000. 2015, 268,000. 2016, 813. 2017, 1.6. 2018, 2.8. 2019, 3.7. This year we're going to do $10 million. And my profit margin is big. All right? So what did I do? I basically started a business and reinvested the money that I was making back into the business, back into growth. And this year, the business is going to do about $10 million with great profit margin. Profit margin is something you also need to pay attention to because too often when people start businesses, they think, oh, I'm just going to grow and I'm not going to worry about that bottom line. Remember, gentlemen, it's about what you put in your pocket, not what you're like taking in. That doesn't matter. It's how much are you putting in your pocket. So anyway, I started Pete and Pedro, and that was the business that actually worked. All right, I also started a YouTube channel years before in 2008 because I just wanted to see what it was like, and I wanted to basically learn video. I wanted to learn this new platform, which is something else that I just want to talk about, and that is you've got to be curious. If you don't want to be broke, you've got to be curious. You've got to be hungry to learn. You've got to be hungry to experience and try different things. Because if you're staying back where you were from a mentality perspective, in the broke mentality, you're never truly going to ascend. You're never truly going to do anything incredible. But for me, I was curious. I was hungry. I felt like I was starting over and the world was my oyster. And so YouTube, awesome. All right, Pete and Pedro, awesome. At the time, like I said, $30,000, that at the time in 2013 was still huge. Remember, it wasn't even like 6 years before that I was filing bankruptcy. And in 2013, I wasn't killing it, but I was financially secure and I wasn't broke anymore because I was living below my means and I was earning more because I learned how to do different things that were going to pay me more. And that's something you just need to understand. The higher value skills are going to make you more money. And owning a business, there's only one way that I know that I can think of that will truly change you long term in terms of your finances if you keep all the other expenses in check, and that is starting a business. If you want to start one, link below to the White Label Empire, guys. I take all the guesswork out of it. I walk you step by step. I have basically built a curriculum through the years of my experience starting businesses. I've had over 20 businesses. I've thrown 20 pieces of shit against the wall. Some have stuck, most of them haven't. And I basically break it down and help you create your amazing opportunity. Because the truth is, when you look at all the people out there that are killing it financially, that really aren't broke, they're not working for somebody else. They're working for themselves. They started a business. I got a link down below, guys. $97 a month. That's it. It was $500. We said, no, I want people in there doing amazing things. And so we reduced the startup cost, $97 a month. If you're interested, join us. We would love to have you. Something else that I did that I didn't realize was so impactful at the time, I started to look for other opportunities that were interesting in terms of making money. Now, at the time, I didn't realize that this was like a money-making thing. I just thought that I was basically going to buy an office so that I could be more productive, because that's actually what happened. But that was something else that basically changed my trajectory, and that was getting into real estate. Now, when I first got into it, this was the first asset that I bought. I had enough money for a down payment. I didn't have the full amount of money. It was like $330,000 or something to that effect. And so I had to get a bank loan. And the interesting thing about commercial bank loans is that it's basically like a 5-year loan. And at the end of 5 years, you've either got to refinance it or you've got to pay it off. Well, when I started to actually learn and look at this bill that I was getting and realize the implication of interest and how much money I was basically just giving to somebody else for the opportunity to borrow money, that was when something else changed in my brain, and that is pay down your debt. Do not owe anybody anything. And this was another thing that basically changed me in terms of getting me off of that treadmill, but also it basically just made me rich. honestly, because even though, and this is one of the things, a lot of people say don't pay cash for real estate or don't pay down your debt, invest it because the opportunity cost is a lot more if you're not investing it in the market or this or crypto or whatever. I felt comfortable knowing, okay, if this interest is 5%, all right, and I'm going to pay it down, that means that I'm basically making 5% for myself, or I'm not spending 5%. And even if that could make me 6% somewhere else, and I'd be clearing an extra 1%, and if this makes no sense, what I'm saying, you got to educate yourself more about money, but that's something else. Let me just back up for a second. Learning about money, that was something else that I did over the course of the past 15 years that has changed everything. Once I learned the impact of interest, once I learned the impact of credit rating, because that's something else you need to understand. If you've got a shitty credit rating, you are going to always be broke because it's going to cost you more to borrow money than it will me. Because I basically treated my credit as gold and that I was not going to F up because when I filed bankruptcy, it was literally like 300, right? I got my credit score back up to like 813. It was huge, right? And the way that I did that is that I protected it. And I did everything I could to not overextend myself, to pay off my debt whenever I could. And when you do this, banks and the credit rating system is like, whoa, what the hell is this guy doing? He is definitely somebody that I want to loan money to because he's worthy. He's not going to skip out. He's not going to file bankruptcy again. Now, caveat is that basically you can't file bankruptcy for 7 years once you file it. I don't know if the laws changed, but back then that's what it was. And so they know they got you. They got you stuck if you do get into trouble. But me, I wasn't that stupid. You know, the way that I think about myself, I am not in any way, shape, or form the smartest person in many rooms at all. But I'm stubborn. And I'm also somebody that learns from his mistakes. How do I know, not to drink and drive? I got a DUI. How do I know not to basically spend a bunch of money on credit card? Because I literally had a bunch of credit card debt and I know that it is stifling. It's like a 1,000-pound gorilla that you're constantly carrying around. It is literally robbing you of joy and happiness. And that's the reason why I feel like debt is the devil. A lot of people love debt. They're like, yo, I'm super leveraged and it's good and I'm taking this extra money, whatever. I sleep better at night knowing that I don't owe people shit. Like literally, if the universe collapses, I could be like, deuces, I'm cool for a little while. And that's what happened during the pandemic, right? I had these businesses, I had these assets, and I knew that, okay, if the shit hits the fan, like seriously, we're gonna be okay. From a company perspective, Pete and Pedro, I knew, okay, I can afford because I've got extra cash because I still live below my means in order to pay my staff, or basically float the system until we get back on track. And that's a beautiful place to be. When you are cash rich or you have lived below your means enough that you have acquired some degree of financial stability and wealth, whether or not it's in a 401k, whether or not it's in the stock market or wherever, it's a liberating feeling and a liberating experience. And so for me, I truly feel like that has been the biggest game changer. Being broke is, honestly, it's devastating. And even though they say money can't buy you happiness, I've been broke and I've been not broke. And I know that not broke is a lot better. Now, money doesn't solve all your problems. Money doesn't mean that you can do whatever you want whenever you want it. But it allows you to solve problems easier and faster and not have to deal with stupid shit. And that's pretty much what I've learned. And so I just wanted to share kind of my financial story from being broke to not broke. And the real takeaways and reasons why I feel it happened is that I had a really bad situation where I had to file bankruptcy and I wasn't a dummy. I realized that if this is going to happen, I need to never have this happen again. So what do I need to do? I need to live below my means. I need to not fall into the trap of perpetual consumerism and buying things that I want when I really don't need them. Living below your means. This is something that I cannot stress enough. Do you really need to live in the place that you are or drive the car that you are? The two areas of your life where we spend the most amount of money is where we live and what we drive. By living in a little less nice of a place or driving a little bit older car, you can have that extra money. And then you take that money to invest in yourself, educate yourself, learn a new skill, or invest in assets that are going to pay you back or pay you dividends or make you more money in the long term as investments, which is what happened with my real estate. But I also invested in myself and decided to do something hard and also do something that was a little bit scary, and that was start a business. I truly feel like the real reason why I have scaled the way that I have is because of the business that I was willing to take the risk on, because it's not guaranteed. And that's the other thing you just got to understand. It's scary. The reason why people don't try is the fear of failure, the fear of being broke or bankrupt or whatever. Manage your risks. Don't extend yourself more than you should, and be smart and get mentorship where you can. But educate yourself about money, about interest, about credit scores, and about financial freedom. And I'm not saying that you need to have millions of dollars in the bank to be financially free or not broke. Not at all. You need to live low enough below your means and have enough coming in that you basically have extra money. So if the shit hits the fan or something happens, you are cool.